So when you're considering a trade show project, one of the biggest factors that you need to gather information about to help us do a good job is the shipping environments, and I try to make that plural because there very often are multiple situations that trade show gear encounters. So let's maybe take the worst situation, and that might be an overseas project that is going on short notice. So there's no ability to send out large crates. It simply has to go by parcel freight to get there as soon as possible. So now we've got a long shipping cycle. We've got to break things down into smaller cases and containers, etc. So under that circumstance, knowing which carriers you're going to use. Is it going to be UPS or FedEx, or are the size of the items such that they need to go with a freight forwarder? If you're going with a freight forwarder, sometimes people have to ship really large items. There are standard containers that they're filling in order to utilize the space well within an aircraft. And they can give you feedback on what goes in those containers, and it's far more efficient if you don't have things that that require something special. So again, knowing the environment that it's going into is critical. The far more common are truck shipments, and there's at least 3 different levels there. First of all, are people with their own truck. This is their own gear, and usually folks are handling that fairly carefully. So for that, if that's the only way that your material is being handled, we can probably steer you towards something that is a little bit lighter weight and less expensive. And in turn, whether it's going to be of enough weight to require being handled by pallets, or a pallet jack and forklift, or whether or not wheels are an option. If things are going on a truck, wheels are always a bit of a conflict. With wheels, we have basically 3 options. You can have the larger cases with casters bolted onto the bottom. Some carriers will refuse to accept those. If you're using your own truck, a lot of people make arrangements to simply strap those securely and everything is fine. If you're using your own truck, you can generally count on people to be fairly careful with forklifts and pallet jacks, and not so in the rest of the world. And in turn, it may well be that you don't even need a case. It could be that a padded cover is going to be adequate for some of the things that you're handling if you do it yourself and you have a constant load plan that you use. Then the next step up the scale to try to minimize the impact of that transportation environment on your handling gear are folks who do dedicated trucks, generally for the trade show industry or for people doing demonstration items, where that is picked up at your dock and placed on either a moving van or some similar vehicle that may have other people's freight on it, but it's a route that's going to take that truck to those points. So your item goes on the truck and gets unloaded at its destination. That's far different than the more common environment where it goes on a, quote, common carrier and goes into a so-called LTL, less than truckload environment, where it may well, it's going into a hectic environment to get packed on a truck. That truck is going to go a comfortable night's ride and no further. That generally means it's going to go to the next terminal for that shipper. It's going to be unloaded. It's going to be stacked on a dock with a bunch of other things. That in turn is going to be retrieved, placed on another truck, and the odds of it not being on the bottom of something heavy go down with each time that it gets placed on another truck. So depending if it's coast to coast, it could easily go through 4 terminals before it gets there. You may have carefully organized a pallet load that is just so. The truck line has a heck of an incentive to break that pallet load into component pieces, to scatter those pieces and mix it with other freight to max out the space that's available within that vehicle. So we need to take those contingencies into account, and now you're dealing with people in a rush environment with forklifts. Nothing that we can provide is forklift proof. A motivated forklift driver is going to win every time. However, there's a lot of variation in forklift resistance. There's variation on the design to make it friendly for forklifts. So one of the things that we pioneered was what we called glide balls. They're not really a turning ball, but they're in a molded aluminum ball that is welded to a flat plate. That goes on the bottom of a box instead of your conventional wooden pallet legs. So in turn, because it's round, it has a relatively low amount of surface on the floor. So it is fairly easy for someone to yank that fairly heavy case and make a little bit of adjustment to be able to line it up to have better access to get it on the forklift to begin with. That can also be invaluable to you in handling it in your own warehouse. It may mean that there are times that a couple of people can just give it a yank and slide it. You don't have to call the forklift driver over to begin with. But in turn, it means if you're shipping something long and skinny, that instead of having a runner right across the end of the case that's impervious to being able to get a forklift tied into, with these glide balls, you can slip the runner in from the end of the case and maneuver it, without having to just bang the end of the case with the tip of the forklift. So so in turn, you're eliminating a lot of damage to the pallet runners because you're not requiring them to bang the case to move it. And so that's been such a popular item that one of our case shell suppliers has just came out now with a molded plastic version of it that's less expensive and appropriate for a lot of applications. In turn, though, if something's going to be handled by forklift, we don't know for sure that they're going to take the time to slip the forklift tines all the way across the case, or some cases are big enough that they simply can't. So that means as they pick up your precious cargo, the tips of that pallet jack may be right in the middle and place a whole lot of stress on that part of the floor. So for that reason, we always recommend going to metal plate on the bottom of the case, and unfortunately that does add weight and expense. We see a lot of people out there using plywood, but unfortunately it delaminates and just doesn't have the lifespan that we need.